Welcome to the Indie Opera Podcast.
Welcome to the Indie Opera Podcast. This is Peter.
This is Walker.
This is Chuck.
And joining us today is the team who created The Hang, a ritual celebration of queerness, questions, and the eternity of the moment, which will be performed as part of Prototype 2022, January 7th through the 16th.
Since recording our show, the 10th anniversary Prototype Festival has been postponed till 2023 due to a surge in COVID cases. Performances of The Hang have been pushed back to January 20th and continue through February 20th at Here Arts Center. Please consult here.org for any updates.
And with us is MacArthur Genius, Kennedy Prize, multiple Obie Bessie winning, I could go on, innovative performance artist, and I labeled you a revolutionary, Taylor Mack. And also with us is composer and music director Matt Ray, who is a Brooklyn-based pianist, composer, arranger, singer, songwriter, as well as choreographer Chanon. Oh my God, did I say it?
Chanon. Yes.
Chanon Judson, who has been with the critically acclaimed Urban Bushwoman since 2001, and who is the scenic and costume designer. And with us is scenic and costume designer Machine.
You've aged a lot since a few minutes ago.
Just got a lot bigger, Chanon.
Yeah, I'm like, you want me to do that?
Scenic and costume designer Machine Dazzle, who has really, if you've ever seen a Taylor Mack show, half the fun is the costume design and the set design. So welcome you all to the show. So I was just telling everyone that I'm going to embrace the gray areas today in homage to this show called The Hang, and allow it to be a question in the air, exactly where we go with the show. Because first of all, I read all the statements and everything, and I still don't understand what the show is. So I tried really hard, but I don't get it. Which
Maybe
is fine.
That's how you'll feel after you see it too. Who knows?
Exactly.
Well, anything that's not boy meets girl is confusing. And even that sometimes is. So
even that's getting confusing.
Yeah.
So we're big fans of the Prototype Festival, and they really do some innovative programming. And are you creating this for the first time for the Prototype Festival?
We are, yeah. We're premiering it. It's a piece that Matt and I have been working on for, I guess, Matt, 2 years now? Is that right?
Yeah, we started right before the pandemic, ironically enough. A show about gathering together and hanging out. Started to write before the calamity came. So.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Definitely, our writing was informed by our situation, and we, But yes, we started a couple years ago. I guess it was the end of 2019.
Yeah.
And can you give us an idea of what the show is? Is there a storyline, or is it a concert, or?
It's the final hours of the life of Socrates, thus the beard.
Okay.
So it's the final hours of his life, and we kind of imagine it, as Matt uses a lovely phrase, which is a meditation of the eternity of a moment. So we kind of imagine that those final hours of his life lasted centuries, and it's and also just a few moments, and that what he asked for on his final day was to hang out with his friends and talk about virtue. That's what he wanted to do. So they came with their own agendas, as everyone does when someone's dying. he was being executed. So people came to cry and to mourn him and to celebrate and reminisce. And he said, no, 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 no. I just want to hang out and I want to talk about virtue. So that's what we've done. We've written a piece that is a little bit of a ritual. The concept is that it's something that happens once a year. Everybody gathers, a bunch of queers gather to reenact the final hours of his life, so that we continue this conversation about virtue for all of time. You know, because there's the gift. Yeah.
And I love the description of a ritual celebration of queerness. Having been a queer for quite a while, even longer than you probably, Taylor.
Well,
I was
throwdown.
I was looking at some of your statements about when you first came out. You first came out in the 86?
91.
91.
I was like it depends on what you mean by coming out. If it means parents, then 1991.
I came out in 83, which is kind of terrible.
Yeah, well, then you're an older queer than I
Yes,
am.
I'm an older queer. But it's kind of interesting that you're talking about this celebration of queerness. Queerness has changed so much. What does it mean for you? I remember when we were first coming out, the whole struggle was for acceptance and blah, 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 blah. But it seems that queerness, now not all gay people are queer. I honestly feel that there's sort of people who embrace difference, queerness, and that, and then there are people who are just, they're just gay. So what does queerness mean to you?
I'll just acknowledge that it's not the same in every place, but yeah, I think in our New York City bubble, for the most part, not even in all of the households in New York City, is it still okay? But I'll say that queerness, to me, I take it from Penny Arcade, who says a queer, and it's funny to let somebody who's some people would say wasn't queer because she's been with men most of her life, But I actually take her definition. She says a queer is somebody who was ostracized by society at such a young age that they don't want to ostracize anyone else.
Oh,
that to me is what a queer is, and I try to live that. I can't always say I live up to it, but I definitely it's the agenda.
Well, I like that the energy I get from watching your performances it's always a positive thing, even when you're dealing with something as horrible as alienation. There seems to be this love that sort of radiates and embraces the performance itself, and joy. But sometimes, you're talking about some very difficult subjects.
Well, I think that it comes from that ethos of not wanting to ostracize anyone, but it also comes from the community of the people that we have gathered each other around each other, and certainly Matt and now Chanon and Machine have been part of this world that we've been making for a number of years, and I don't know, everyone kind of, the company that we have for the hang is so dear. I was just saying it to somebody today. They say, how's it going? I said, I don't know. It's really talented people. Everybody has a good attitude. When do you get that? It's very rare. But then I've looked back on my life and I thought we almost had it with Lily when Matt and Machine and I all worked on Lily. There was a few, people who were grumpy, but for the most part, we really we had a pretty good team there, and there were over 35 people involved in that show, and 24 Decade had over 200 people involved, and everyone was lovely. So I think it's a little bit of our ethos is that Matt can talk to this too, is that we kind of hunt for the people that are game to be kind to others.
Now, how did you and Matt meet, and how did that collaboration begin?
You want to take that one, Matt?
Yeah, that's a fun story. We have a mutual friend, Rochelle Garnier, who is an incredible artist who's who was a singer, a songwriter, chanteuse, New York downtown hero, I would say. And Rochelle called me one day and said, "Hey, I've written this show, The Lily's Revenge." Well, I don't even know if she told me the title, but she said, "I've written this show, and we need a pianist to read through some of the music, and will you do it?" And I remember I had just worked like, I don't know, 11 nights in a row. It's like freelancing, and was lying on the couch in a white tracksuit. And I'm like, am I going to get up and go to this thing? Yes, I am, because there's something like, there's some energy telling me I need to do this, you know. And so I did, and I got there, and it was like Amber Martin, and who else did you have singing that day? I'm trying to remember.
It was Amber, and it was Rizzo, Lady Rizzo.
And Lady Rizzo, yeah. And,
yeah, and then what's his butt? Adam, yeah. What's his butt? You all know what's his butt.
Yeah, you know everyone. We know everyone. Anyway, all these cool downtown performers there, and the music was amazing, and then so that's how we met, and I ended up music directing The Lily's Revenge, and that started the last, I guess, 12, 13 years of collaboration. So it's been super fun. It'll be on.
I was curious how you two picked or where the idea came for virtue, for talking about virtue and Socrates. Had you been thinking about that beforehand, or how did that idea come up?
Well, there's a line in the show that happens a few times where somebody's like, he's drunk the poison, right? He's dying, right? And somebody says, aren't we all? I mean, the end is nigh, girl, and it's this constant, like, kind of, because the end is nigh, girl, kind of thing that is a reframe. And I think that's what makes me think of virtue, is just every day you turn on the news, and it's a lot of people shouting a lot about how horrible the world is. And I don't know, if we only got 2 hours left, don't you want to go out talking about how to live a virtuous life in that 2 hours? I mean, I don't know. I want to hang out with friends, and I want to figure out how we can be as good as we possibly can be to each other and the universe, and how we can go out in a good way. I think that's, I want to say thank you, and I love you, and hey, what do you think about this theory? And I want to make music. That's the other big thing. I want to sing.
We are making a 24-decade history of popular music. It is a radical theory, a realness, a ritual. Sacrifice. Here we go! When we've been here 10,000 years, we've known it's a single phrase, and when we must begin, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now was blinded. Take it away.
So if it really is the end of the Roman Empire, as everyone keeps saying it is, the American Empire, then let's sing some songs and do some dancing and sweat. Let's sweat together.
How long do you feel like that vibe has been happening in the world, where everyone is angry, everyone is divisive? I mean, are you talking about the last 6 years, or is it shorter than that or longer than that?
I mean, it feels like my whole life, but it definitely, with the invention of the internet, it's definitely more present in our lives. I don't know, there's it's hard to even find a safe space, quote unquote safe space, where it doesn't exist, so you can't like just go home and escape it unless you turn everything off. And even then, unless you isolate, and that's not the solution. Yeah. Well, that's my feeling. I don't know. How do you how do you feel?
Yeah, I always wonder if is it the end? I mean, we tend to look back at the US and I know what they tell us in school, right? About freedom and all this stuff, but really our Constitution has discrimination built into it. It's anti-democratic. If it was going to be democratic, we wouldn't have a Senate. I want to put a little historical perspective on that. You sang, didn't you? You sang the history of the United States. You must have seen the waves of what happened in the 20s, what happened in the, our civil wars. Or is this worse?
Yeah, I can't say I sang the history. I sang a history of the United States. I wouldn't say the history. I sang a history. And we all made that show together. Everyone on this Zoom was involved in that show. So it was. It definitely was. That was a beautiful meditation. That was my experience of it. That it was a beautiful meditation of who we are and how we want to be different. I guess that's. Yeah, and how to build ourselves as a result of having this horrible history on our backs. Yeah.
A lot of the joy that you get from seeing your productions is from the costumes, and every time you come on stage in something new, your breath gets taken. Breath gets taken. Machine Dazzle is hiding, but. When you give Machine Dazzle, what kind of direction do you give Machine Dazzle, and what do you think of? Did you say go ahead, be creative?
No, I tell them what I'm making. I try to say this is what I made. This is what I'm making. This is what I think I'm making, or maybe I'm not making that. Maybe I'm confused myself. Because every project is new information, and you get confused sometimes. But I tend to tell them what I'm making, and then I say, Are you interested in making a response to the offering that I'm making? And so I that's an idyllic way of working. It doesn't always work out that way, but so that's how I try to work with Machine and how Machine works with me. And I think in general, how we all try to work together was just to say, like, this is the theme of the show, and what are you going to make? Yeah. So if I tell Machine what to make, it's never as good as if he just makes something that he wants to make. Yeah. So I just trust him to make whatever he wants to make, and then I wear it, Victoria sponge. That was the last outfit.
So Machine, when you design for other people, is it as fantastical as it is for Taylor, or does he bring out something special in you?
Well, there's a whole timeline of how I've come to make things the way that I do. And, I met Taylor, we met in the very early 2000s, from what I remember, and George Bush years, the Republican, the conventions and marching in the streets, and then in all of the gay and queer spaces in downtown New York City, where you were, on your ukulele and, interesting cabaret. And then I was involved with this group called the Dazzle Dancers, and we were strippers, kind of like strippers with a cause. And I was also experimenting in a lot of, gender fuck drag. And I don't know.
And you've worked with Justin Vivian Bond.
I've worked with Justin Vivian Bond. I've worked with quite a few people. And it was always, with Taylor, it's hard to answer the question completely. I like to test out people's comfort zones and push their limits to see how far they'll go. In all fairness, I would never have anyone wear something that I wouldn't wear myself. And I do make myself very uncomfortable for long periods of time because of the way that it looks, because it changes people's lives. It changes the way they see. I like putting stories on, they're not wearing a costume, they're wearing stories, they're wearing ideas, and it gives the audience work to do. In Taylor's case, we worked together for so long, so I've been able to push a lot of, I've been pushing Taylor, and it's not like I had to push Taylor, but I'm like, Taylor, you'd come off stage, I would notice, well, gosh, that was a little easy for him. I think he could handle a little more. Next time there's more. And it's like, that was easy too. Okay, let's do a little bit more. It's like, some people would not wear what me and Taylor wear. With the hang, this show coming up, for example, I've already run into a couple of the performers who have kind of let me know their limits in advance because they know where I like to go. One of the performers even created a Pinterest page. So it's like, okay, warning, flag, okay, I won't push it. And plus, because of Chanon's amazing choreography, in the most recent rehearsals, I've seen how they're really moving. You learn what can move and what can't. I think, intricate or interesting real like headgear isn't going to work for this piece. I think if they're wearing something, they can throw it around. But, stuff on the head has to be, you don't want it to fall off.
Is there a lot of collaboration between Machine and Chanon on this? I mean, did you all talk a lot about, how about the movement and how the costumes could be involved in that?
Yes, and I'd say there's a lot of collaboration between everyone. We had a year that we did not expect of planning time with the hang, and what was really brilliant with this team, and shout out to Nigel Smith, who's not on here right now, but is the director for the hang. The team decided that we would still meet. What was it, once every 2 weeks?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah,
pretty regularly.
Yeah, every 2 weeks throughout all of last year, and so we were all.
That was in person or Zoom?
Oh no, in Zoom. In Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was a lot of collaboration and sharing of ideas and understanding of the work throughout the years. And then when we actually got into workshops, I would say just continued sharing, much in a way that was already outlined. I had the opportunity first to plug into this space as a performer. And so, and that's in the performer realm, it's like, okay, Machine made these things. You go out and you share them with folks, or you find something to do with them, or this is the costume. So there's a way that I had integration inside this space that there's part of the joy and the opportunity and the invention is how do you lean into the thing that's available. And that's definitely been how I've been investigating this time now as a collaborator. Like, okay, Machine, what are you thinking? And, if Machine leaves something in the space, then I play around with it and say, hey, Machine, I found this, this bow could actually be like a 6-inch wig. What do you think? And just, there's been a lot of play.
So
cool.
So I'm curious about the musical content of this. So is this all new music? What are we going to hear when we see the show? Or is it a sort of a collage of multiple pieces?
It's both of those things. I think it's definitely all new music. We're not adapting anything that we had written before or that anybody else has written, I don't think.
Nope.
And as to whether it's a collage, that's just what it is in my brain. But that was my initial process. I think our initial process in many ways. The form came after the compositions were written. Not all of it. Some of it Taylor had sketched out in advance. Had many drafts of scripts, but we were lucky to have support, to have workshops, to be able to find our way to what the end form of the piece would be, and that involved lots of conversations and ideas. And as far as the music, it's really the music of my life. I mean, it's like, I grew up playing jazz, and while I hesitate to put labels on the music because there are going to be people that are going to come and say, it's not all exactly jazz, or what is jazz, or if you use that word, it's the wrong word. And I get that, and I hear that. And sometimes I think we use these words as out of convenience because they've always meant one thing to one person and one thing to someone else. It can be complicated. But I will say that it is the music that I grew up playing, and I was really excited to have an opportunity to put all of those ideas that have been sort of marinating in my body for decades into something as rich as the text that Taylor was sending me. And a word about the process that we used. Because we were remote, we didn't choose this process, but it sort of chose us, where Taylor would send me these lyrics and they'd appear in my inbox, every couple of days, or every, depending on what we were doing, like how it would be a couple days, a week, sometimes many at once. We probably cut a lot of songs, maybe as many songs as we've written. But I will say it was so exciting, like being locked down in the house, and this poem will pop up in my email, and I have to figure out what it means. And then once I try to do that, what music would express the lyrics the best possible way. So that was, and I just drew on the music that I've always played. I've been a jazz musician for, so my career started professionally in 1990. So 31 years of professional gigging as a jazz musician. So I didn't want to, while I write in other genres all the time, I didn't want to limit my opportunity to access that wealth of experience I had in that particular style of writing.
So the music was created first, and it's sort of the heart of it, and then the structure of the entire piece came after?
I think it's a little bit more kind of yes and to that question, in terms of, it originally was going to be a solo play that I was writing, that I was going to do an adaptation of the Apologia, which is this piece by Plato that's about the Socrates trial. And then that kind of got turned into an idea to make it a solo music theater piece. And then that got turned into ensemble. And then that got turned into like wanting to work with Matt. And that got turned into, one of my feelings was, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking a little out of turn, Matt, but the jazz world, I've heard stories about how the jazz world was pretty homophobic in a lot of parts of it. And when Matt came and started working with us, it was a different world that was more embracing of, obviously, queerness. And so I had this desire that Matt get to make the music he wants to make in our world, as opposed to saying, hey, play these, pop chords. Instead, do this thing in this world. And so we've always had a lot of fun blending worlds together. I usually like the downtown performance art world and actor, professional theater actors. And I've always kind of squished them all together, and dancers. And so this was just an extension of that, I think. But yeah, so it came, the form changed quite a lot. It has changed quite a lot. There's many, many drafts, but I'm really happy with what we've come up with.
And how did the operatic form get pulled into this?
There was so much dialogue. And slowly but surely, I had a reading of it, and I'm like, and then the more the songs were written, the more it just felt like this is just sung through. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So the whole thing is sung?
It's all sung. There's one tiny little scene.
Wow, that's pretty incredible, actually. I know that you're used to singing a lot. You sang a show that was 24 hours long. when I listen to your voice, it sounds like there's operatic training there.
I tried to train for 24 decades, and I certainly learned a lot with my teacher, Barbara Mayer Guston, on how to take care of my voice instead of the horrible habits that I've learned. But I'm in no way, shape, or form I would never describe myself actually even as a singer.
The fact that you are able to sing for 24 hours and still even croak by the end means that there's a technique there, whether it's natural or learned.
I at a certain point I got interested in how a voice is rough around the edges more than I was interested in a pure tone. And I personally I love Joni Mitchell. I love the way she sings now. I really do. I think her voice, she's got one octave now, and it's just exquisite. Not to say that there was something wrong with the way she sang before. I just like a voice that's a little rough around the edges. So when I realized that wasn't necessarily musical theater, or it was maybe more Sondheim musical theater, then I realized you just needed to branch out. I'm always trying to make my voice rougher than it actually is. I approach it from an acting point of view, which is that there's a reason why you're singing. It's because you can't possibly speak it anymore. It's so heightened. You got to sing it in order to communicate it. So it all comes from more acting training than it does any kind of real commitment to vocal training.
And in the show, you said that it's jazz, quote unquote. Is it freely improvised? Do we go all the way to the jazz universe?
Yeah, there's plenty of improvisation. The forms are set. I think with theater, that's important, particularly for choreography, but also just for understanding what you're doing and for technical reasons. But yeah, there's a ton of improvisation within it. And there are also things that I wrote to sound improvised that are not. So I kind of borrowed out from some different ideas. I always try to shrink a world into a jazz club when I'm doing this kind of music, where what if we were all in this tiny room, often it ends up not being that. It can be, we write things that are much bigger than what we started out thinking about. But I also got inspired. I'd been out watching some shows and hearing the way certain saxophone players blended together. And so I wrote a lot of 3 saxophone things in this show that are kind of part of the expression of the show, kind of the theme of the show. We have this thematic. Without giving too much away, we have this. Socrates takes the poison, the hemlock poison, and I have these poison themes that come from these 3 saxophone players playing sometimes in perfect harmony, rhythmic unison, and sometimes completely topsy-turvy sounding, or a little bit what's the word? Like you're high or something. Trying to get the feeling of this seeping poison into the space. So there's lots of improvisation because we have great improvisers in the band. So I wanted to utilize all of the opportunity to let them express themselves, and I really think that's one of the unique things about the show, is that we ask people to come into this show and bring their personal expression as much as the show makes room for that, and everybody kind of gets a chance to do that. So it's great, both the cast of singers and the musicians.
The musicians are choreographed into this piece as well. They're not just sitting in the background playing music. They're part of our ensemble. And actually, we're about to do some of that work, aren't we, Chanon?
How does that work for you, Chanon? I mean, it's not typical. I mean, there are certain shows where they actually choreograph and work the musicians into it. Have you done that before? Or is this new to you too?
So yes, and Nigel and I first met on the production of Fela, where I was a player inside of it. Nigel was associate director, and that was one where very much the musicians were part of a moving body of people. They were dancing, they were protesting, they were active on the space. And then, so there's a reference there. And then from the world that I spend a lot of my time in with Urban Bushwoman, we work very collaboratively with musicians, actors, movers, dancers, whoever's in the space. And if you're in the space, you're in the space, and there's equal opportunity / responsibility to be a moving, breathing, storytelling body inside of the space. And so that's part of the understanding and agreements that I come from. Not the only place I've ever worked. I've definitely worked in places where it's like you over there and you over here and you do this and you do that. But in terms of where I've grown and learned, that's the thing that makes sense to me. And we'll discover it in 2 days. But to go a little bit to how the ensemble are improvising, that's also happening very much through the movement. So there's some things that are set, there's some things that are scored, and there are some things where it's like the idea is drawing constellations on the ceiling, or finding them. And, how you find that inside of your body is up to you to discover.
Have you started making musicians move yet? And how are they receiving that?
It's what's already been named. There really is a science that I don't know, I'm just a part of, but there really is a science to who's in the room. And so there's just a lot of really generous, skillful folks who are here who are like, yeah, I'll try it. And have leaned into, can you play that line down? Oh, okay, that works. Or that was a bad idea. Let's try another one. And thanks for trying it. So there's a lot of what I do as choreographer. It's not a word that it's a title that you'll see on my name when I do things, when I shape for people. But I generally call myself a maker and a collaborator, because a lot of what I do has to do with me observing folks, noticing what people are doing, and then reflecting that back, and then offering some kind of manipulation or shaping to that, so that we are inside of a collage together. So, I'm not necessarily moving the musicians as much as I'm saying, oh, I saw you hop. And so now that I know that you can hop with that instrument, that it's in the work. Because anything you do in front of me is fair game. So,
right.
So does that mean that the musicians are costumed to Machine Dazzle? Do you have?
Yes. There's an overall theme about what the musicians are. Well, there's a whole theme, of course. I'm also the set designer. And the props and the costumes. So there's a lot going on, and things are kind of, it's a part of this and it's a part of this at the same time. So the musicians, in a way, the way they're going to be dressed is they're part of the set. And I do, because it's Socrates, I am going to just use this opportunity to go Greek a little bit. And I want like all of these long, very generously, pleated. I have this really amazing fabric, has this really nice weight to it, and it drapes really beautifully. And it's all of these like subtle colors. I want to add some brights and some interesting, fun things to it, but they will, it'll be very elegant. I love things that move anyway. The thing about the musicians is they need to be able to move and play their instruments. So it can't be crazy, which is why I need to keep it simple, but it can still look like something. So I'm foreseeing as soon as you enter the space, they'll be there and they'll be playing. And it's like they're kind of, in a way, they'll blend in with the set a little bit.
The 24-decade piece had a very specific relationship to the audience. The show was, the audience were it's America, right? So you had this relationship. the concept for this show, is the audience as integrated into the space, and how are you arranging that?
Matt and I talked about this a lot because we spent basically 10 years, and if you include Lily, where the performers were in the laps of the audience a lot, and then even more than that. And I've been, touring in the laps of my audience for decades. So we did talk about how, maybe it would be nice to just have a show where the audience is where they are and the performers are where we are. And that when we break that fourth wall, it's very specific and it's not just part of the given reality of the world. I think what we're going to find when the set actually gets put into the place, that all of that will change. Nigel always says, we're making the show that works in the rehearsal room, and then when we get in the space with everything, we're going to remake the show that works in that. So, exactly. So that's, I think, going to happen. But I think we're interested in what it means for the performers to be in the hang as opposed to the audience, since we've made the hang with the audience for decades. So yeah, I'm kind of loving that. I'm loving that there's this tension there's this expectation that we're going to come into their laps, but we're playing with that tension instead of actually there's no audience participation, right. Other than that you're here and you're as what Chanon just said, you're by being in the room, more than just your presence is expected of you.
So Machine Dazzle, is this going to be a thrust kind of a thing where you're in or is it sort of proscenium distant?
It's interesting. The Here main stage is a fairly intimate space anyway. So you're not far from anything. And there are elements of the set that do extend into the audience space. So you're in there. I don't know if I should mention concepts for, when we were first talking, I mean, I've actually—
They'll forget. It's okay.
They'll forget. Well, it's like, well, Taylor—
you can give away the secrets.
A couple of years ago, well, I mean, I've kind of, been aware of this project for a while and through its changes, not on the level of Matt, of course, but, I remember, Taylor, when it was like the apology and you mentioned it to me, and then it turned into something else. And then you were talking about remember satyrs, but then it's not that anymore. Then it turned into the hang. There's been, so I've been through, and there are a few things that have stayed through all the way through. And then when Taylor and Matt, I feel like when you really started really presenting your concepts, like astrology, let's say, seasons, that kind of thing. It just, I just wanted nature. And for a while, I'm going to say for 2 years, I knew that I wanted to. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of people wanted to be in nature. And I think that there is a longing to do this in an outside theater, in nature. But something that always depresses me is when you see fake nature inside a black box theater. I find it just depressing, and it's always kind of sad. And I'm like, well, it's never going to look like outdoor nature. So I kind of wanted it where inside. So I was thinking inside nature. So my overall concept for the set is that we are inside of Socrates' body after he drinks the poison. And there will be elements of that. It's like, what's that squishy? Is it an organ, or is it a place to sit? I mean, what is that over there? It's like, there will be things that are obvious and things that are not obvious, but that's just as a point of inspiration.
This is what I mean. If I had written that, it's so perfect for what we're doing, because Matt and I have created this text and music. It is about the process of this contemplative creature longing to be with others and deteriorating. So and it's both interior and exterior, and just Machine picks up on all of that, and then he comes up with a concept that we're inside Socrates' body, and it just solves it just solved everything. When you told us that, I went, that's it, of course. Then I understood who the ensemble was. They weren't, I was like, are they satyrs? Are they Greek figures? Are they radical fairies? Are they this? Are they that? Like, we were just juggling different ideas of what they were. And when Machine said that, I
All
was
of
like,
the above.
of course, they're all of the above, because it's all in his body. It's all, he's going through this moment, and he always will be for all of time, because we are constantly keeping him alive in the culture, because we are constantly recycling the injustice that happened to him in the culture. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, it's just another example of just make your offering, and then when somebody makes another offering, you go, oh, amazing.
Yeah, that is such a great idea. Can you all talk about how Nigel, how all of you work with Nigel, since he's not here? Like how is he brought into the process, and how do you work with him as collaborators?
Nigel has run the rehearsal room and directed us with the most human, expressive, deep philosophy of how to bring people together. We all were coming out of this pandemic as damaged people. Each person in the room, the very first time we got together, everyone was bringing these experiences, this trauma, death is around us, and our lives are even more fragile than they were before, and people have been alone with themselves for all this time, and trying to be creative, but also trying to just, cope and all of that. And Nigel just had so much grace. And so from the very beginning, the rehearsal space has been a place of deep humanity. And I've been super grateful for that. And I think a lot of the performers have, and musicians have as well, because typically when you come in, you start working on a piece, it's like, we got to get this done, we got to do this, and there's this energy there, and that's really useful as well. And it took someone like Nigel just saying, okay, but let's go around and have everyone give a little bit of expression first, so that we all can learn how to hang together. Even though most of us knew each other, the hang in the room was important. It's not just that we're making a show, we're making a hang for ourselves, we're making a hang for the audience to witness, to possibly feel like they're a part of, to lean forward towards. And Nigel just understood all of that. So he's not here, but it just, that's my thank you to.
He's here.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, he's here. Yeah, I mean, what was it like having a process like this after the pandemic? Was it difficult for people? I mean, we're still experiencing the pandemic, obviously, but was it hard for people to commit to the process and interact with each other?
Everyone's a little bit more insecure than they were before, more vulnerable, or willing to show their vulnerability, which is a certain kind of energy and navigation and responsibility to hold and make space for. And I certainly am not immune to any of that. I just like, it's been an interesting ride. I have never, I can't say I've never been this insecure. I'm just now starting to find my way in it, and feeling really good about my personal process. But it has taken, there's been a lot of doubt for me throughout the whole process, not in my collaborators, who I just think are remarkable. And I had an acting teacher who, I just try to remember it all the time, was always like, the life savior is the other person on stage with you. If you ever have a problem, stop thinking internally and just pay attention to the person on stage with you, and then the problem will go away. And so that is really kind of, I keep trying to remind myself of that in the process, and it's helping because the company is so lovely.
So the pandemic is it work its way into the storyline? Do we deal with it at all, or is that just external to this show?
It's metaphorical, but it's not directly dealt with. I mean, yeah. I mean, you can't make a piece about hanging out together without the understanding that you don't always hang out together. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a little bit why we're returning to the Here Art Center. We're all at a place now where it would be, it's nice to go and work at a fancy theater that provides every single thing that you could ever want for you. And the Here has done an amazing job producing this. They're a small organization and it's a giant show, and they went into it, and they've treated me certainly better than my experience on Broadway was. So I'm very happy with how they've treated us. But we wanted to go back to Here because I wanted to go back to Here because it's like you got to hang out with the people rather than the careerism, I think, in order to really make art.
So as the producer, are you rehearsing in their spaces too?
We've been rehearsing at Theater for a New City, which I've never worked at before. So that's been kind of fun to be in that weird, giant, funky space. But now we're about to move into Here. And Machine's been, you guys have been putting in everything, right? Today and yesterday?
Today was our first day of load-in. And right when we started this meeting, I don't know if you noticed, I had a phone call and it was a delivery, and they were delivering. They tried to deliver the toilet. They gave them a 5-hour window from 2 to 7. And I'm like, well, I got to go. Sorry, it's 8 o'clock. You missed your window. You'll have to deliver it tomorrow. Oh, sorry. Spoiler alert. There's a toilet.
The toilet is coming late.
Toilet. It'll be there tomorrow. Yes. There's
you can't have a hang without a toilet.
You can't have Socrates without a toilet.
It would be a bad idea.
Yeah.
So give us an idea about the orchestrations for this. You mentioned 3 saxophones. What is the ensemble? What kind of a sound world are we going to have?
So there are 5 horns. There's trumpet, trombone. That's like a little mini brass section, and then 3 saxophones are alto, tenor, and Barry. But the Barry player she plays tenor as well. So sometimes there's 2 tenors, and then there's this bare bones jazz rhythm section of just piano, bass, and drums. I had originally, a lot of these shows you do, especially in theater, it's like there's a lot. The idea is to have there's a pianist and a guitarist and maybe a drummer and a percussionist and like all these layers, and then there's one violinist and and like one horn player or something. And I just wanted to go deeper into some other sonic things that I don't hear when I go to the theater, and also just had this itch to write these parts, and it doesn't really go into big band world the way that you would think. There is some of that, like shout chorus kind of stuff in some of the songs, but it's really about individual expression of the different instruments that sometimes collaborate with each other. So that's kind of a metaphor for the whole show and how we've made the whole show. I'm just always interested in how to make things sound like there's breathing and voices in the room and talking in the room, and so bring that kind of humanity. And I think horns just do that in jazz. They bring this human expression that you don't get in a lot of other genres of music, where they're more thought of as accompaniment or pads or something. So that was super fun to write, and we're still crafting as we go with the individual players. But yeah, it's been super fun.
To cast a bunch of singers / dancers / whatever, are they actual characters, or does someone play, I don't know, individual, or is it?
There are 2 characters. There's Socrates and Plato, and then the rest are ensemble members. But it's the kind of ensemble show where everybody's got solos and duets, and everyone's chiming in and doing things. So it's a real ensemble show, I'd say. And we got amazing performers. We got people from the jazz world. We're also actors too, like Queen Esther, and Kat Edmondson and Ken Ard. Ken Ard he was in the original production of Cats on Broadway. He played McCavity.
Wow.
And he was in Smokey Joe's Cafe, and he was in Starlight Express, and he was in Socrates, and he was in, I mean, he's been in so many kind of legendary things. We were all talking about Fosse the other day, and he was like, oh, yes, I've worked with Fosse, you know? It was like,
Wow.
you know, and like, ah! So, yeah, so there, and then we got new people, like Wesley Graham, who's just this, he's insanely talented young man. It's just like I couldn't be more in love with that queen. So so it's a real, you know, there's something borrowed, something blue, something new, something old, whatever it is, you know, that's kind of what it feels like, and people from different worlds all kind of coming together, and I don't know, they're just so divine. I don't know what it is. Why are they all so nice? It's partially because Nigel set the tone right. He really did. He set the tone right from the beginning.
What did you? Why did you pick Nigel as the director? Was there something specific that you wanted him to bring to this project?
Well, I met Nigel. He was directing a piece that Lady Rizzo was doing many years ago, and she asked me to be in it, and I just it was kind of a short-lived thing, little cabaret, just one-off performance. But I thought, this guy knows how to talk my language. Then I asked him to direct my play Here, and he ended up doing 3 productions of Here, and then he co-directed 24 Decade, and he directed The Fray, and now he's directing this. So he's a longtime collaborator at this point. And what I find remarkable about Nigel is that he can speak to all the genres, all the forms. Just has all the techniques. He can talk to you about method. He can talk to you about theater of the ridiculous. You know, he understands all of the styles, and he's an experimentalist at heart, but he's got this kind of grounded realism training as well, so he can kind of bring all the, and I think all of us here are hybrid artists. We're kind of always pulling from lots of different things, and so to have somebody who can channel the chaos that could potentially bring, and he channels it, as Matt was saying, with such grace. He's just never anxious. He always knows. I've seen him deal with some of the like intent, not in this show, but intense personalities, really intense, crazy, fucking crazy people, and he just is like, it's just like, okay. He's just so even keeled, and he just allows them to be who they are. And he's a lot like Flawless Sabrina would have been. You know, he just says, someone tries to attack him, and he just says, let me say why what you're saying right now is super important, and why your process is real. And I just am so moved by the way he works.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Something that that surprises me with Nigel is he has this really, you know, as everyone already said, this beautiful way of setting a culture of allowing and care. And at the same time, Nigel is able to go like this, you know, like I'm probing. You know, Nigel is able to encourage folks to bring more. And it's such an interesting balance. You know, I've just been like enjoying sitting close and listening and learning as a collaborator with him, the way that he's able to bring people to this place of, oh no, there's something more there, just try it, you know. But there's been all this care and love wrapped around it. So it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll go stand a level higher. Maybe I'll go up on the piano, you know, and people are willing to take a little bit more risk and a little bit more stretch that, you know, it's all the things. It's vulnerable, it's unknown, but people do it. And it's really a powerful skill set that he brings to the room that I'm enjoying watching him shape that way. And then like people do a thing and I'm like, oh, that's the new thing. We're gonna do that now.
I love that you all are talking about, you know, kindness and just, you know, giving people that room to take a risk, you know, because I'm a director also myself, and some directors I've worked with have gone the opposite direction, you know, like playing actors against each other, having people compete against each other for his attention. And when I was, you know, just starting out, I always wondered, wow, does that get better results, you know, than which way gets better results, you know, that the very like harsh critical thing, or really just allowing people to just open up, you know, like a flower, because they feel so safe. And I think you're right. I think that's the way to do it, because when they see that it's okay to go further, you know, they will go further, and they'll go further than you ever thought they could. You know, I mean, that must be fun for you, Machine. You know, to see, you know, people graduate to ongoing levels of, you know, like what can they wear, what can they deal with, how much can they take.
Yes, Nigel, keep pushing them, keep going.
Keep pushing.
Keep doing it. Don't stop.
I think both are successful in terms of they can both produce. I mean, look, Jerome Robbins was, by all accounts, pretty horrible to the people he worked with, but he produced some good results. You know, it's just like, how do you want to live? That's like what it really comes down to. Because I know that both can work. So I much rather prefer to hang out with people who are nice to each other, and you know, and it's volatile. Like the creative process is sometimes volatile, and it's a lifetime process of letting go of ego and figuring out how to do that, and recognizing when you're holding on with your ego as opposed to actually, you know, when you're protecting yourself, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So it's a work in progress. So who do you want around you while everyone is working on how to be brave? You know, it's just rather people that are going like, go for it, do it, you can do it, as opposed to you're a loser.
You're terrible.
So one of the things that I like to think about collaboration is, one of the things people have to remember is not to hold their ideas so tightly. You know, this is my idea and it won't change. It sounds like, Taylor, that you very loosely, gently hold your ideas and allow it to go wherever they're going to go.
I think content dictates form, and I think that's true of the rehearsal process. So we're making a show about hanging out together and talking about virtue. So how could we actually make that show and figure out what that show is about if the question of how to behave in the room isn't present, you know, and how to support each other isn't present. So yeah, I don't know, another show about a cheese factory maybe wouldn't need the same kind of diligence.
Depends on the cheese factory.
Are you working on a show about a cheese factory?
No.
I'll see that. I'll see that show.
But I'd like to see Machine design that show.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm really glad that you took the time to talk with us. It's really wonderful. Let's just make sure, though, that our audience knows where to hear more about you all, and so that we can discover. So now, Taylor Mack, you have a website.
I do, and but you should just go to the Here Art Center. That's where they're doing it. Here, HERE.org, and the show's called The Hang. And I tell you, I haven't heard any music like this in a theater. Usually when you hear this, I don't know, Matt calls it jazzy music, and this doesn't feel that way at all. It feels so unique to this particular piece. I find it exquisite. And of course, Machine is always exquisite, and Chanon is always exquisite. So, you know, and it's definitely going to be worth something.
So, thank you all for joining us. It's really, really amazing to hear about this. So good luck with the show.
And we will, on our website, we have links to your various pages and social media. We'll post that as well. This is the first podcast of 2022. So Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We want to thank everyone who watched and listened to us over the past year. It has been an honor and a pleasure. This was our 10th year, and it was so great to celebrate that with you all. And now in 2022, we're starting with the Prototype Festival like we often do. And I'm looking forward to 2022 actually having lots more performance. Our fall has had some, so let's pray for a normal 2022. Let's hope. Pray to whatever you believe in. Thank you all for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to our show. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes, all sorts of places, and follow us on the various social media so that you can find out what's going on. And thank you so much for being on the show, Shannon, Machine, Rat, Matt, Taylor, Walker, Chanon, and Chuck, if he's still there.
All
right.
Good
night, thank you.
Take care.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We hope you enjoyed our show. Please give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or audio podcast feed on Apple Podcasts. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or feedback of any kind, please let us know by emailing us at comments@indieopera.com. Help us to make the future of opera brighter and bolder with a tax-deductible gift today. Donate to the Indie Opera Podcast on our website, Facebook, or on Patreon for special benefits. This episode of the Indie Opera Podcast was recorded on Zoom with co-hosts Walker Lewis and Peter Zepp, and our special guests Taylor Mack, Matt Ray, Chanon Judson, and Machine Dazzle. Our show is created with the support of co-hosts Ashley Renee Watkins, Business and Operations Manager Brooke Larimer, Associate Producer Chuck Sachs, Jonathan Blaylock, PR Consultant, Gregory Moomji, Web Correspondent, and Rosha Crean, our theme song creator. This episode was edited by Peter Zepp. Thank you for watching.